So there's a specific type of cringe that really just overtakes you whenever a conversation ends. It's like you're driving home or you're laying in bed and then suddenly that conversation comes back into your mind and you think about all the things that you told them that you wish you would just shut up about. You think, oh my goodness, why did I say all that? They asked me one specific question and I gave them my entire backstory. I gave them answers to questions that they did not even ask me about. I told them about my pet dog. I told them about my pet goldfish. I told them about my entire work experience. They only asked me how my day was, or something very similar to that. And personally, I've been thinking about, why do people do this as humans? Like, why are we constantly finding the need to over-explain ourselves in almost any given situation, or almost trying to prove ourselves in a conversation to somebody that doesn't really hold much relevance in our lives? And when I looked at the actual mechanism underneath it, and not just the surface level stuff, it actually completely changed the way I communicate entirely, and I really hope I can teach you something with this. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Anna. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the like button down below and get notified whenever I post a new video. My goal is to be extremely consistent with this to hopefully teach you guys something new that you maybe haven't thought about before, and that's why this video is actually very important today. Like, the whole thing I want to talk to you guys about are two forces that completely changed my life. Quite literally, scarcity and mystery. I've been practicing these a little bit more lately, not in the sense of mind games, but entirely in the sense of, okay, what is the actual backstory and the mechanism underneath these two forces? And hopefully I can teach you something today that I've applied in my life that you can apply in your life to hopefully make yourself feel a little bit more elevated, a little bit more confident, maybe a little bit more sexy in a relationship. Well, anyway, let's go ahead and get back into the video. So sometimes over-explaining doesn't always just look like rambling on for 10 minutes. It could honestly just even look like somebody saying, hey, can you please take on more work? You say yes, realize you can't, and then you spend 5 minutes justifying, okay, this is actually why I said yes, even though I can't. It can also look like, let's say you're a coach, consultant, whatever, you give somebody your price and then there's a little bit of tension and then you start justifying your price. You start over explaining, no, this is why my price is this. You start explaining every line to them and then you start apologizing in some cases of why this is your price, because maybe you don't feel like you're worthy of it. I can speak on that entirely because I actually have some experience in that. Shame no more, but it was a little area of my life. Anyway, it can even look like when someone cancels on you and then you say, oh, it's completely fine, and then you feel the need to explain why it's fine, even though all you could have said was, hey, no worries, we'll schedule it another time. The one thing that all of those have in common, nobody asked you for the second half, but you gave it to them anyway. Now that's actually an impulse. It's an impulse to keep answering somebody after you've already given them your main answer. And it's actually doing something to how people perceive you in their minds, and not a lot of people actually understand this concept. So the first force that I want to talk about in this entire concept is basically called scarcity psychology. In simple terms, it just means that the rarer something is, the more that the brain is going to value it. And you've probably heard about this in some way or another, or some version of another, but it's basically the more limited that resources is, the more that you're going to want it. It's like the idea of, oh, we want what we can't have. Hence why a lot of women go after the boys that don't really care about them, because it's the need to win over something that is limited, which is i.e. their attention, if that makes sense. A lot of people just completely skip over this part, but they think, okay, scarcity psychology, it only applies to certain objects, or maybe an Hermes bag, kind of like I mentioned in the previous video, or some other type of luxury product, or a certain situation or circumstance, which could be someone's attention you're fighting for. But not only does it apply to objects and situations, it also applies to information, it applies to access, and it even applies to you. Think about it like this. You have one friend that posts on social media maybe once a month, maybe even less, honestly, maybe once every 3 months to say the least. But when you see their post, oh my goodness, it's so good. It makes you want to stop. It makes you want to read it. It makes you think, I look forward to their post because I know it's going to be valuable. It's scarce. Now think about the other person, person B, who posts on social media 3 times a day. It's not that their content isn't good, and honestly, their content could be just as good, if not better. But your brain categorizes persons B content as abundant and ordinary, and therefore it is not limited. Their resource is not limited to you, therefore it's always accessible. It's always going to be available to you. Whereas person A, it's like a hit of dopamine every time you receive it. So I want you to think about that analogy whenever you're thinking about, okay, scarcity psychology, because that's honestly where I want to take it. So with that idea, I want you to think that your words will work the exact same way. When you feel the need to over-explain yourself and justify yourself and fill every single gap, every single void of silence, you become abundant to other people. And abundance is not a problem in terms of life and purpose fulfillment, but it does become a problem whenever it means that you are constantly accessible and your energy and your time is accessible to everything else around you. So it doesn't mean that you're not valuable. It doesn't mean that you're not worth it. The brain just is going to assign no value to you whatsoever. So the second force that I want to talk about is actually called the information gap. And specifically, there was a psychologist who studied this so much, and his name was George Lowenstein, and his findings basically showed that, hey, when there's something in the brain between what we know and what we desire to know, the brain is going to fixate on that gap. And what that gap does is actually create a pull for us to desire it more and to be able to actually find out what does that gap fill. So you've actually probably felt something like this before. You might have received a text that says, hey, we need to talk. Immediately you are thinking, okay, what are we going to talk about? What does your brain do? It starts spiraling. It starts running through every single scenario of what could this possibly even be about? You start thinking to yourself, are they going to talk to me about this? Are they going to talk to me about that? You start coming up with scenarios in your head that is taking up way too much real estate in the beginning than it would if your brain had an explanation to close that gap in the first place. So why do we do this? It's because of the information gap. An explanation would fill that gap instantly where you don't feel the need to spiral in the first place. This is what mystery is. It is not a game. It is not a persona. It is not a personality test. It is just a natural pull of an incomplete picture that we do not fully have. When someone doesn't fully explain themselves, your brain is constantly asking you, what am I missing? Who is this person? Why do I not fully understand them? That's literally just mystery doing its job in the first place. I can come up with so many different analogies for this specifically, but I want to talk about your favorite TV show. Maybe they have had a cliffhanger or two in the episodes in the series. Well, that's mystery doing its job, keeping you hooked in, keeping you wanting to know more. It's being able to promise you something that is going to happen in the future that's inevitable, but you don't know when that promise will happen. Therefore, you are engaged and eager and desirable to know more. So here's the part that actually broke my brain when I put these two forces together. And this is the thing I couldn't stop thinking about. When you over-explain, not only are you making yourself seem less confident in yourself, you're also killing both forces at the exact same time. Because when you over-explain, you're making yourself seem more abundant. Scarcity dies. When you over-explain, you're closing the information gap. Mystery dies. And you hand over anything before anyone even had the chance to wonder about you, your aura, who you are, your presence, your feeling, whatever. And now specifically, the brain, which assigns value to things, has nothing to assign value to. It actually just puts you in a mental filing cabinet as fully figured out, fully accessible, fully available, and readily known. Now think about the woman who, when she gets invited out, she just simply says, no thanks, can't make it. That's it. There's nothing else to be said. The people that she responds to, they're not physically and consciously saying and thinking, oh, she has other options. Oh, she already has plans. Oh, she seems confident in her answer. Subconsciously, they're thinking, oh, she must already have something else going on. I should have asked her sooner. And they start putting her on a pedestal. And it's not a bad thing, but that's just how our brain assigns value. Specifically, the scarcity made that person feel rare, and then the mystery made them still feel curious about her. The one thing that really stuck out to me in all of this is women are taught from a very early age that you have to compensate for other people's feelings. You have to take care of and you have to manage other people's feelings. There are two forces that you can never control, and that is other people, their feelings, and then your own future. that's in God's hands. Again, from a very early age, women are taught that we have to justify ourselves so people don't feel like they're left without a reasoning. We have to over-explain ourselves so there is no awkward silence or there is no awkward gap. In other words, we just have to keep on talking and we have to keep on rambling. Not a bad thing, but it is the reason why a lot of women feel the need to put themselves out there a lot more and prove themselves to other people because they don't feel like they are already inherently blessed with value. And the Bible specifically says that she is worth more than rubies, and the Bible talks about a Proverbs 31 woman, but it's all of these things to show that women are inherently born with value, whereas men create their own value. But it's the idea of needing to remind women that, hey, we actually already inherently have value placed on our lives. We just need to access it through constructing a better mindset for ourselves and our lives. This all does come from a very genuine place, but it does work directly against scarcity psychology. When you feel the need to manage somebody else with your words, you're basically just making yourself more abundant and more accessible to them. That's not really needed, or that's not really warranted, especially if you're someone that wants to grow into a completely different level of yourself and have a completely different level of personal development. You are degrading yourself day by day the more that you make yourself more readily abundant to others and everything else around you. And what your brain will do, and what other people's brains will do, is it will stop finding you as interesting. Therefore, it has placed you into a filing cabinet as boring. It's not because you are not interesting, it just means that your brain or someone else's brain has been given all of the information before it was even able to classify you, or before it was even able to wonder in the first place. Let's take a little break because I want to clarify, I'm 21 years old. I have not figured this out either. I have not figured this out in any way, shape, or form to the perfect, to a T. I'm just obsessively curious, and I like to close that information gap inside my brain. But it's mainly because I see the way that women walk into a room so confident, so eager, so audacious just with their presence, and it's addicting, and I want to be that woman. I aspire to be that woman. I practice to become that woman. That's why I want to talk about these things, so that way you can learn it too, in case this is something that you want to do, in case that this is something that you want to be. But it's being able to have, I'm going to use the word aura, it's being able to have that aura that commands attention on the spot. Being able to do that is another level of personal development and another level of confidence. I've been complimented on this to some degree, so I do know what I'm talking about, but in the sense that I'm always wanting to become better, and I want you to become better too. Now, what's meaningful about this is not a game, and I want to be very clear that this is not some strategy to be how to be more mysterious and how to be more alluring. It's not manipulation. I'm not teaching manipulation tactics, but it is something much deeper than that. So when you tend to over-explain yourself, you're sending a signal not only to your brain, but to the room around you and everyone else's brain that's saying, hey, I don't feel like my answer is good enough, so I'm going to keep explaining myself until I feel like my answer is good enough. That is not a communication problem. That is entirely a self-worth problem in wolves in sheep's clothing. Now let's look on the flip side of that. If we're looking at the woman who just lets her answer stand as is, that woman has inherently decided within herself, my answer is good enough, and it signals to everyone else, my answer is good enough. She's not being cold in any way, shape, or form. She's not being short. She's not being rude. She's just inherently placing more value in her words, therefore more value in her presence, which is allowing herself to command more attention and allowing herself to be inherently seen as more valuable to the person's brain. Psychologically, this happens to everyone around us. The people who say less tend to be heard more. The people who are the quietest in the rooms tend to be asked the most questions. I want you to try to pick that out next time you're in a big room or with a big group of people. Watch the people who say the least amount of words. That's what self-worth actually looks like in practice, because a lot of people think it's just an affirmation I say to myself in the morning. It's not that, and it's also not just a feeling that you're going to get. It's a decision that you need to make consciously for yourself to stop needing approval for your own choices, actions, decisions, and explanations. If you're going to be honest with yourself, and if we're going to be honest now, you probably already know exactly which situations are coming to mind that make you reach for that explanation the most, that make you reach that need for approval the most. You're probably already thinking and considering, I could probably say less in this situation. I don't need to over-explain myself to this person. Think about it like that, and just add little subtleties like that in your life. Now, the most applicable thing I can think of to where you can just apply this probably within the next 24 hours if needed is whenever you're in a conversation and you just start feeling the need to talk more, to explain yourself more, to say more than needed, don't do anything else. Just first notice the urge. Notice why you're feeling this. Notice where you're feeling this. Why do you feel the need to explain it to this specific person? Because from there, you can make a conscious decision to just stop, pause, take a breath. The other person might just think, hey, they need to breathe and catch their breath. When in reality, you're actually training your brain to think, I need to stop talking. I need to not over-explain. I need to let my answer stand as is. But once you notice the urge and once you have that data to kind of just sit with yourself, you get to make a choice. You get to make a decision. Does this over-explanation or does this explanation serve my fear of me being let down and serve my fear of me not being worthy? Or does it actually serve my explanation in full? Like without this context, they will not understand. And it's dire and needed, like it's a must part. If it serves the fear, don't say it. If it actually serves the explanation, go ahead and say it. Just try to keep it short and simple. Just even noticing this in your everyday conversations, you can develop a habit to say less. And the less that is needed, the more value you are perceived to have. And the more value somebody's brain is going to assign you as a person. And therefore, it's going to make you become more mysterious to the person. But what this does, it actually creates a gap in the other person's brain. And it's creating that information gap that we talked about at the beginning of the video, because when you just leave what is said, it, like I said, creates more value. But you're creating more of a gap in someone else's brain to be able to want to know you more and to be able to get to know you more. So if you are in a dating relationship or you're going out and meeting other people, what you can do is just say less and ask the other person questions. I'm going to use a really good example because I've actually tested this. I went on a date with a guy 2 years ago. I still remember this. Great guy, wonderful guy. We are never going to be together because I have a very different standard of what a man should be in a relationship. He had a very charismatic personality, a very audacious and bold personality, if you will. I remember the first 2 dates that we went on. It lasted maybe about 2.5 hours. I didn't say a single thing about myself. The entire 2.5 hours, I asked him questions. I asked him questions about himself, about his work, and I just fed every single question with a follow-up. Just keep going deeper and deeper until different rabbit holes. Just letting him talk about itself, letting him talk about his ideas, his morals, his standards, things like that. This is my little secret sauce, if you will. What it did is he kept asking me on more dates. I didn't keep going, but he kept asking me on more dates because he kept telling me, I feel like I don't know enough about you. I feel like I'm missing a couple of pieces. I feel like I want to know more about you. Like, you're amazing. You're so intriguing. You're so alluring. Putting me on this pedestal. And he's a very successful man, very high value man. But I just knew right off the bat that we weren't going to mesh well and it was just not my type. But it's being able to create that scarcity and that mystery around who you are and then reflecting it back on the other person and putting them in a sense of power that they think that they have. If you keep that scarcity and you keep that mystery, you can apply it in honestly the most fun situations ever. But please be careful with this because it does have some side effects of people always coming back to you. But what I really want you to take away from all of this is that scarcity says what is rare is always going to be more valuable. And mystery says what is incomplete will always be more interesting. So when you over-explain or you overindulge or you make yourself more abundant, you are draining both simultaneously. You're doing it quietly, you're doing it subconsciously, and thus you're going to feel more drained as a person because you are taking away the things that make a woman a high value woman and you're taking away the things that give you that seductive life force energy. A fun book I recommend is quite literally The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. I love that book. I think I've read it twice. Go learn from all of the examples in the book. It gives you tens of thousands. I've learned through experience that high value women don't act cold and don't hold back because they're arrogant. They've just learned, consciously or not, that everything does not need to be said. And the things that aren't said are the things that people will sit on and digest the most. They will sit on and think about and try to meditate on the most. Well, anyway, that's pretty much all I really want to talk about between scarcity and mystery for today. I have so many other things I wrote down for this video, but in the sense that I didn't want to make this video incredibly long. But if you love this video, I would really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and a subscription down below. Leave a comment about which one you feel like you resonated with the most, and leave a comment about if you've applied this in your life before and maybe your experience with it. I really want to hear how things like this impact you, and that way I can learn from it as well. But if I have to leave you with one piece of advice for today, and I have to leave you with one last thing, if I can believe in you, you can too. Well, anyway, bye.